Wallace Gromit Vengeance Most Fowl features the return of two familiar faces from past films, something that's unprecedented in the history of the franchise, as no characters aside from Wallace and Gromit themselves have ever properly returned in another film after their debut. So ahead of his unexpected return later this year, we'll be taking a look at the history of PC Albert Mackintosh in the Wallace and Gromit franchise. Police Constable Albert Mackintosh made his debut in 2005's Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit and was voiced by iconic British actor and comedian Peter Kay, who recently reflected that Mackintosh sounds remarkably similar to another of his characters, Brian Potter from Phoenix Nights.
Where's Rafferty?
He's on his dinner.
Dinner? It's 10:30 in the bloody morning. Look at all this. It's a disgrace. This flipping vegetable competition causes nothing but trouble every year.
Here we go.
Both the characters' name and appearance are gags in themselves, with PC Mackintosh being a reference to Microsoft's PC and Apple's Macintosh, who remain rival computer brands to this day. Whilst upon the removal of his helmet, Macintosh's head is revealed to be the exact same size and shape.
That's enough. That's enough. Luke.
He's actually the first character we physically see in the film, as he patrols the streets on night shift, whistling obliviously as it's framed as though he's being pursued by the were-rabbit. Later revealed to be just a standard-sized bunny rabbit. He has a disdain for the vegetable competition due to the trouble it causes, and believes the were-rabbit to simply be a hoax created by one of the townspeople.
If you ask me, this was arson.
Arson?
Aye, someone arsing around.
You can find this scene by searching Funniest Joke in History on YouTube, which now has millions of views. With this in mind, Mackintosh attends the vegetable competition in an attempt to keep everything under control, ordering the public around using a large megaphone, which fails to draw their attention.
Cucumbers, give way tomatoes. Carrots, wait your turn.
Ironically, it's Mackintosh himself that ultimately breaks the serenity, as when Victor Quatermain reveals that the were-rabbit is in fact alive, he obliviously repeats,
The beast isn't actually dead, eh?
over his megaphone, sending the public into a frenzy.
Oops.
His final act is to put himself before the townspeople in the face of danger.
Stand back. There may be a large rabbit dropping.
But despite surviving the incident, he isn't seen again for the rest of the film. The reason for this is partly due to some deleted scenes at both the beginning and end, which were later released separately and helped to flesh out the character. In the original version of the opening, Mackintosh stops by a shop window and berates a poster advertising the vegetable competition.
I don't know. Vegetable mad, this lot.
He's spooked when the silhouette of a large rabbit seemingly looms over him, but upon turning around to face the beast, it transpires to just be a moth on a street lamp. Mackintosh remarks to himself that he's been on too many late shifts and needs a holiday, which would have been the only time his name was spoken on screen.
Albert Mackintosh, you need an holiday. Too many late shifts. That's what it is.
In the director's commentary, Nick Park mentions that he doesn't think they were entirely right to cut the scene, but the argument for its removal was that the focus on Mackintosh so early on would affect the pace of the opening.
I think it was the whole argument for losing it was just to keep things going and meeting him first and hearing him talk and getting his character seemed to.
I can see that now, actually.
Right.
If you look closely, you'll notice the actual cut in the final version. As he walks towards the shop window, then the angle changes and he's suddenly walking away from it. Similarly, Mackintosh was supposed to play a larger role in the movie's ending, which originally consisted of a scene implying the marriage of Wallace and Lady Tottington, before the camera pans out to reveal that it's actually PC Mackintosh that Tottington is marrying.
I always did like a man in uniform.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Dave Sproxton commented that Nick Park wasn't happy with the original ending, adding, "The problem was that PC Mackintosh wanted nothing to do with this vegetable stuff at all. He's a huge cynic about the whole competition. And then there's Lady Tottington, who's the biggest tree hugger in town. Yes, it's comic that they get married, but they wouldn't. It doesn't play to their character.
It was a very bizarre idea and quite sad, I think, that she would end up with not with Wallace, but...
Yeah. We tested it on an audience and everybody felt a bit sorry for Wallace, which gave it quite a negative feeling.
This resulted in a major rewrite very late on in production, which held the entire shoot back for a month. The original ending was never animated and exists only in the form of these storyboards, though it's still fascinating to hear that this very nearly made its way into the film.
What we'd intended to do was to put some piping in to suggest that her and PC Mackintosh had some kind of relationship.
But despite his reduced role in the final product, PC Mackintosh remains one of the film's standout characters, and even had his own merchandise, like this collectible figure from McFarlane. Mackintosh also featured in the Curse of the Were-Rabbit video game, though Kay didn't reprise the role, so the character was instead voiced by Dean Williamson, who does a half-decent impression of Kay's Bolton accent.
Well done! You deserve a commendation. Basically, we're dead chuffed with what you've done for the town. Dead chuffed.
Much obliged, I'm sure.
For the duo's next video game, Wallace and Gromit's Grand Adventures in 2009, Mackintosh is nowhere to be seen, but in his place is PC Dibbins, who's interestingly also voiced by Williamson.
If it isn't Wallace. I had a notion he'd be nosing round the police station this morning.
His characteristics and voice remain much the same as Mackintosh, so I always assumed the character's absence was due to licensing issues, with Were-Rabbit being co-produced by DreamWorks. Therefore, it seemed unlikely that this relatively minor character in a film from 2005 would ever return, let alone be portrayed by Peter Kay, who hasn't acted in several years. But on the 6th of June 2024, that is precisely what was announced. Peter Kay will return to voice Chief Inspector Mackintosh in Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl, with the character having been promoted at some point in the last 19 years. Since Wallace is now being voiced by Ben Whitehead following the passing of Peter Sallis, this makes Albert Mackintosh the only character in the movie to return with their original voice actor, so it's nice to have that as a kind of anchor to the world of Wallace and Gromit. As for why Peter Kay decided to come back to acting for this particular role, you only have to see his frequent visits to Wallace and Gromit's thrill-o-matic ride at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, or read a paragraph of his recent autobiography to find out.
The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Now that was an honour. Everybody loves Wallace and Gromit, how could you not? Nick Park created the most glorious, meticulous characters that will stand the test of time forever. I did the voice of PC Mackintosh, a local village bobby who sounded remarkably like Brian Potter. I was just chuffed it was set in Lancashire, which meant a lot.
The return of Mackintosh raises many questions, since we haven't had a character come back like this before. Will he have aged? How does the passage of time work in Wallace and Gromit?
Hey, give over! Mental.
I kind of like the vagueness of it all in the previous films, but it'll be interesting to see some world building at the same time. I can only imagine that as Chief Inspector, he'll be leading the investigation following Feathers McGraw's latest prison break. But going off the preview footage that we see here, it seems possible that Feathers has framed Wallace and Gromit, as their house, specifically Wallace's inventions by the looks of it, are plastered with police crime scene tape. So, did you ever anticipate the return of PC Mackintosh? I certainly didn't, and in many ways this was more of a surprise than Feathers McGraw. Speaking of, there'll be a similar video covering the history of that character prior to his grand return, so be sure to subscribe to keep up to date. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.